If the probability that South Florida will be hit by a hurricane in any single year is 5/19, what is the probability that South Florida will be hit by a hurricane in 4 consecutive years? First of all, recognize that these are independent events. The occurrence of a hurricane in year 1 has no effect on the probability of a hurricane occurring in year 2, 3, and so on. We have the probability of a hurricane 4 years in a row. That's the probability of a hurricane. I'm just going to abbreviate here. Times the probability of a hurricane times hurricane times hurricane. We're using and probability. Probability of a hurricane and hurricane and hurricane and hurricane. The probability of having a hurricane in the first year is 5/19. The second year, 5/19. The third year, still 5/19. And the same for the fourth year, 5/19. So we can throw this into the calculator. In a shortcut, we can take 5/19 and raise it to the 4th power. That's the same thing as saying 5/19 times 5/19 times 5/19 times 5/19. Raise 5/19 to the 4th power, and we get a decimal. Let's see what that looks like as a fraction. Math, enter. Notice it does not give us a fraction, but we can still write this as a fraction if we wanted to, and sometimes your homework will want you to write it as a fraction. The calculator just didn't do it automatically, so we need to look at the numerator and denominator separately. So look at 5 and raise it to the 4th power, and we get 625. And now separately look at the denominator, 19, and raise it to the 4th power. And here we get 130,321. So this is the probability that South Florida will be hit by a hurricane in 4 consecutive years. Part B is asking, what is the probability that South Florida will not be hit by a hurricane in the next 4 years? So probability of no hurricane in 4 years. Well, that's the probability of no hurricane times probability of no hurricane times the probability of no hurricane times probability of no hurricane. Now we need to figure out what is the probability you get no hurricane in the first year. Notice that the probability that you do get hit by a hurricane is 5/19. So 1 minus 5/19. Here we get a decimal. Let's convert that. Math, enter. We get 14/19. That's the probability that you are not hit by a hurricane in year 1. And that's going to be the same for year 2, year 3, and year 4. And now, let's find the probability we are not hit by a hurricane 4 years in a row. Again, I'm going to want a fraction here, so I'm going to take the numerator only, 14, and multiply that 4 times, or shortcut, raise it to the 4th power. We get 38,416. Divided by 19 to the 4th power, which we already found earlier, 130,321. This is the probability that South Florida will not be hit by a hurricane in 4 consecutive years. Question C is asking, what is the probability that South Florida will be hit by a hurricane at least once in the next 4 consecutive years? The probability of at least once is 1 minus the probability that it doesn't happen. And notice we just found the probability that the hurricane does not happen in 4 consecutive years. So we have 1 minus our previous answer, and again, if we put this into the calculator will probably not convert it for us. So we will probably have to do this in a different way. So we will get a decimal, but if we try to hit math enter, notice it's not converting this for us. So we need to think of a way to put this into the calculator with the numerator and denominator separately, like we did for the other example. So we need to rewrite 1 using a common denominator, that being 130,321 over 130,321. So now this fraction represents 1, so that we can now look at the numerator and denominator separately. 130,321 minus 38,416, focusing on just the 2 numerators there, we get 91,905 over the common denominator, 130,321. And this is the probability that South Florida will be hit by a hurricane at least once in the next 4 years.